here.
The fuck? Hey man, I got an idea for a video. Alright, here we are in Denver, Colorado at Cheesman Park. This park has some interesting history behind it. Back in the mid-1800s, it was a cemetery, Mount Prospect Cemetery. Come 1890s, they were not utilizing it as much, so the city of Denver decided to go ahead and make it a park. But they did leave many of the bodies behind, and they're still here today. Today's movie of topic is Poltergeist. I think you all remember that. Back in 1982, this wonderful silver screen gem came out. It was one of the first movies that really intrigued my interest in the paranormal world. For those of you that don't remember it, it was kind of a movie about a new house scene development that was built on top of an Indian ritual ground. One house specifically was built on top of the center of the epidemics, or epic. Carol Ann and her family moved into this house, and she was the one that the ghosts would speak through and to, and she just seemed to be like the catapult of everything. So this park, you know, kind of gives that vibes of where they got the ideal from, being built on top of, you know, a cemetery where it's now public property and people come and go. The story of Poltergeist kind of originated from a story out of Long Island, New York with the Herrmann family. They had experienced some interesting stuff going on in their house from February to March of 1958. Mr. Herrmann is a employee of Air France. Miss Herrmann was a registered nurse. 2 children, daughter Lucille at the age of 13 and James at the age of 12. All right, in the neighborhood, friendly poltergeist was named Poppy. We're not referring to David Ortiz Poppy, but Poppy. Lucille and James had just gotten out of school, came home to where they heard popping noises. Bottles and containers of bleach, cornstarch, nail polish remover, nail polish, even holy water had started to pop and explode. At the time this event started happening, Miss Herrmann was at home. She was a little kind of perplexed, so she called her husband, Mr. Herrmann. He as well was perplexed, but not enough to come home yet. The reason why Mr. Herrmann did not believe at first was he thought it was his son. His son was either playing a prank or maybe doing some science projects at home. So he right away immediately felt it was his son and not a paranormal activity. Over the next few days and weeks, stuff continued to explode in the house. Mr. Herrmann was more concerned as time went on. He then immediately started to believe his son James was behind this, maybe playing some pranks, maybe a science project from school. One Sunday morning, with bottles popping and glass shattering, Mr. Herrmann had enough. He went to confront his son. Mr. Herrmann was in the middle of confrontation with his son when in the background he noticed a medicine bottle slide across the kitchen table. And then, without the assistance of his son, a shampoo bottle flew across the counter as well. Mr. Herrmann was still in the mindset that James was behind this. So he looked for ropes, strings, he looked under the cabinets, maybe it was a magnet. After finding nothing, he did what anyone would do. He decided to call the police. The local police department took the call, and to no surprise, they did not believe Mr. Herrmann. But it was a slow day that day, so they went ahead and sent over Officer James Hughes. Officer Hughes also witnessed with his own eyes bottles popping and glass shattering. Because Officer Hughes witnessed this stuff with his own eyes, it piqued the interest of the police department. So they did send over a detective. Detective Joseph Toze decided to take this case head on. Detective Toze got to the house. He was nearly struck in the head with a globe. He also witnessed a phonograph player move. He also saw bottles popping and glass shattering. Alright, so even after a couple weeks of the detective being there, the bottle of holy water continued to pop off. So after word had spread, onlookers have started to come by to check out the paranormal activities for themselves. One reporter came by, only to have his light bulbs thrown across the room and explode against the wall. Father William from St. Abbot in New Jersey came to the house to anoint it. He anointed it with holy water. So as this story continued to pick up wind, it was being reported throughout the nation through news media and television. Scientists and laboratorists came up with reasonings of their own as to why stuff was going on in the Herrmann house. Reasonings were believed to be downdrafts, explosions, faulty pipes, sonic booms, or an uneasy, restless spirit of an angry chief.
And sins!
Scientists were in the house when they heard popping sounds coming from the basement. They quickly ran down to see what the sounds were. They found a single bleach bottle in the basement with the lid popped off. This was the final one. So after the final bottle had popped, many professionals came in the house. Scientists, firemen, electricians, repairmen, all of them left empty-handed, not knowing what caused the occurrences to happen. So the Herrmanns went on to live their life in the same house. All right, we're back at Mount Prospect Cemetery right here in Cheesman Park. I have a good friend of mine here from Tales of the Craft, Bailey.
Hello. I'm Bailey. I'm from Tales of the Craft. If you haven't seen that show yet, I am kind of the medium for the show. I vibe out whatever area we're in, and I get the gist of the feeling, you know?
Well, you know, Bailey, you were here with us when we showed up. You know, being that you know that this is an old cemetery, did you feel anything when we first got here?
Yeah, so I came about 15 minutes before these guys got here, and I just kind of walked around the park, and I sat underneath the tree, and as soon as I rolled up to the park, everything was cloudy. Like, the whole entire, I don't know, just the area around the park was really foggy. It was really hard to see through, like, spiritually speaking, I guess. Its energetic field was really dense, and I was barefoot and I was walking the grass, and as soon as I stepped foot on the ground, it was super tense and really unnatural, and it just didn't sit right. It just really made me uncomfortable. So
very interesting, yeah. Very interesting.
It's really unlike anything I've kind of ever felt before, honestly. This is the arbitrarium that we found. It says, established as a living memorial to those individuals who love the majestic beauty of these trees. So each person that's listed here has essentially donated a tree and helped this park grow.
All right, let's get back to Mount Prospect Cemetery here and why we chose this location to film. Mount Prospect Cemetery right here at Cheesman Park in Denver, Colorado. We're right now under the main atrium of the park. It's kind of got a very Greek feel to it. This park was donated to the city of Denver back in 1907 in memory of Walter Scott Cheesman. In 1893, the task of moving well over 5,000 bodies from this location was assigned to the Undertaker, E.P. McGovern. So then there were allegations that the Undertaker was having bodies dismembered so they would fit in a child-sized coffin. Amongst these allegations, McGovern was released from his duty and before all the bodies were located and discovered. In 1873, the name was changed to the Denver City Cemetery. In 1875, 20 acres was sold off to the Hebrew Burial Society. In 1885, it was in great despair and the cemetery was falling apart. January 25th, 1890, the city of Denver gave permission to go ahead and vacate Prospect Cemetery. Families were given 90 days to remove their loved ones' bodies and have them moved to other cemeteries throughout the city. For the ones that could not afford it, oh well. Fun tidbit for you, did you know that most of the bodies buried here were vagrant criminals and paupers? And that speculated to why more than 5,000 bodies were left buried here. Bodies were moved for $1.90 each. These coffins were 3.5 feet long. Many do believe that there was a coffin shortage back in the day, but others still believe to this day that the Undertaker was in it for the money, and it was all because of greed. It was said that, one adult body could be chopped up into enough pieces that would fill 3 of these child-sized coffins. Due to the haste of the workers with the bodies, of dismembering them, left bodies, bones everywhere. Onlookers were able to get into the caskets and take souvenirs, so we also now can start getting into that grave robbery going on as well. All right, so I'm going to pull up here a newspaper article from the Denver Republican from 1893. It says, into the first box, some bones were cavalierly tossed by a workman. He then pulled another box to the edge of the grave, and into it he tossed one bone, some earth, a portion of coffin. At this juncture, a man came along with a pot of paint and brushed a number on it, and lettered the box. 2 boxes already filled from a single grave. John E. Wood, the representative of the health department, also came up. When he saw the 3rd box, he asked the man in the grave what it was for. "Oh, I guess there's another one here," said the gravedigger, as he threw a shovel of earth into the box. Mr. Wood looked into the grave and said, and walked away. Another shovelful of earth and some crumbled wood was thrown into the box. The remains were disinfected, the lid fastened, and the body of 274 BH shipped to Riverside. So with these reports coming to light, Mayor Rogers went ahead and canceled the contract, and the Denver Health Department started their investigation. So as many bodies were never reached, also many remained exposed. The city of Denver never gave a new contract to have the rest removed. The year 1902 came, as many of the graves still were unearthed. The city of Denver went ahead and decided to plant shrubs and trees in their place. By the time the park was completed in 1907, the bodies still remained. In 1894, the city of Denver went ahead and fenced off the entire park as renovations for the new park began. All right, so we brought you here today to Cheesman Park to talk a little bit about the history of the cemetery that sits or once sat upon this park that is actually still here. So we'll bring you more information, more details. In part 2, we're going to check out the movie The Changeling, and we'll get back to you with some more facts here. But again, this is since the movie The Poltergeist was based off of a movie where houses were put on top of like an Indian burial ground type thing, we thought it would be really cool to come here where a park and some houses and the botanical gardens are built on top of cemetery still. All right, here stands the original fence, or cemetery gates.
Go.
All right, to check out more on Spirits of the Silver Screen, click on the link right here. We got more fantastic stuff with Culz Paranormal. Check out the link right here, and don't forget to subscribe right here.
It is the scariest movie I've ever seen.
Interesting.
And it's, I mean, it kills The Exorcist.
Yeah.
And everybody thinks that's the, you know, the benchmark, right?
What?
The Changeling.
The Changeling.
Not the
Okay.
one that came out in the 2010s. It was, the house was on the north end of the park. It's gone. One of the high rises sits on the property apparently.